A little while ago I made a video which I think I called something like the Theist Challenge. It was a kind of light reference to a set of videos that were made some time ago called the Blasphemy Challenge. And what I was suggesting in that video was that, just as a purely personal exploration, but I guess one that's open to anyone who chooses to adopt it, is that as a kind of practicing atheist, whatever that means, professional doubter, it might be quite interesting to see what happens if we follow some of the observances that are typical within certain religious practices. And here I'm kind of borrowing not just from the Blasphemy Challenge as a contrary, but also to a really nice video called My Year of Living Biblically, which I think I mentioned in that previous video done by that journalist who supposedly followed the tenets of the Bible, the various rules that are laid out in the Bible for a year, as a kind of personal experiment, but also as an excuse to write a really interesting article, book, whatever he wrote out of it. Certainly interesting video he made as a result of it. And I thought it'd be quite interesting to do that. Now I can't honestly say I've been sitting down every morning and praying. I'm not actually sure if I know how to do that, to be honest. But I do try to, if not follow religious observance, I do try to keep those things close to my consciousness. I do think about these things a lot. I have read things like Loyola, his spiritual exercises. I do meditate now, although probably not as regularly as I should. If I was going to see this experiment out more fully. And follow various observances that I've picked up from not a particularly coherent religious source, but a set of sources which I find interesting. Including things I don't really believe in. So I've started trying to use the word soul and use the word spirit in sentences, for example, and try to find ways of making these terms meaningful for me. Again, as a kind of experiment in chaos magic, that kind of thing. I just think I mean, obviously I haven't been doing it very long, really, a few months, that's all. But I'm just trying to think what kind of effect it's having on me. I suppose what effect I would predict is that I would expect some kind of cognitive dissonance to set up. If I am living part of my life and making various public statements to do with atheism, to do with disbelief, to do with eliminating materialism with regards to things like the soul, for example. If I'm making those kind of claims in one part of my life, but in another part of my life I'm using those terms actively as if I believe in them or accept them or submit to them, and I'm following certain observances which make no sense in rational terms, then I would expect there to be a kind of internal conflict, what's sometimes referred to as cognitive dissonance. And I would expect that to, if not resolve itself, but to kind of play itself out in various little dramas and little scenarios. And perhaps I would feel those dramas and scenarios as changes to my experience, changes to my attitude towards certain things. So I'm just kind of revisiting that to see if those things are actually in place and how I feel about those. Well, I'm certainly not finding myself with a desire to go to church, and I'm not really sure that I actually understand terms like soul and spirit any more than I did some time ago, even though I feel slightly more comfortable about using them. One thing I have noticed, and this is kind of a reawakening of an older attitude, I guess, from my childhood, not one I'm particularly comfortable with, is to do with a kind of reverence for certain objects. When I was, and that's not a really good term, but I'll try and qualify that. Certainly when I was a kid, I used to go to Sunday school. I mean, we weren't a religious family particularly, but us kids did go to Sunday school every Sunday, mainly so that my mum can get a break, I think. And it was just for an hour on Sunday, and it was fine. But either because of that, or as part of that, or perhaps because of other things, I don't know, I did have this kind of superstitious reverence for the objects associated with religion, particularly Christian religion. So, for example, the idea of stealing something from a church would be horrific. I mean, that idea would be just so inappropriate. Whereas it was stealing from something else, whilst I can see it as a criminal act, it didn't have that kind of emotional sense of wrongness. Or defacing a holy book, for example. You know, writing in the margins of a Bible, or drawing rude pictures in a hymn book. I mean, those things I would have found very difficult to do when I was a kid. Now, since then, of course, I haven't been to church for years. I have absolutely no faith in those kinds of religious frameworks. And to the extent that those superstitions are still with me, they're kind of more generalized now. You know, I would find it very difficult, for example, to tear up a photograph of one of my children, or throw darts at a photograph of my wife, or there's various superstitions attached to objects still, but they're much more generalized, much more slight. Don't attach themselves particularly to religious objects, or haven't attached themselves particularly to religious objects. What I'm starting to find more recently, possibly as a result of this little experiment I'm doing, and possibly coming out of the cognitive dissonance which that produces, is I do feel a heightening of that sense. I do feel as if I have a slightly larger, or at least more, or at least I'm more aware of my attitude of potential reverence, or the possibility for reverence towards objects, like Bibles, but also, other objects as well. Which isn't to say I don't seriously entertain the possibility of defacing Bibles and other holy books. I have no problem thinking about it. It doesn't give me a kind of psychological queasiness to think about those things. But the fact is that when I do think about them more. And I don't think I would do that. I kind of understand from the inside, in a way that I haven't understood from the inside for years, what the significance of those kinds of actions would be. I can't put words to that significance. I don't know why that significance exists. I'm assuming it certainly doesn't exist because I think, in any kind of rational sense, that this book, this object, is sacred. I have no rational relationships at all, but I can kind of feel the stirrings of that emotional certainties, emotional allocation of reverence towards those objects, which I think is because of this dissonance I'm producing in myself by entertaining these thoughts. What I may have to do is go to the opposite for a while. One of the tenets of the chaos magic I mentioned a while ago is that you invest yourself into a particular belief system or set of observances or some kind of a behavior until you feel it as true, and then you switch to something completely different. It's a kind of educational process, if you like, that follows that tenet. So given that I am at the stage where I can almost feel it, I can almost believe those things, I've got enough of a sense of what that means to feel it embodied in some way. Perhaps I should go to the opposite and start tearing up Bibles and tearing up Qurans and tearing up Bhagavad Gitas and so on. You shall see.